fallout from Angela Rayner's departure continues, doesn't it, Henry? Now everyone looking to that Deputy Labour leader contest.
That's right, Vicky, because Angela Rayner had 3 jobs that she quit on Friday. One as Housing Secretary, that's now Steve Reed. One as Deputy Prime Minister, that's now David Lammy. And then one as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Well, that's not something Sir Keir Starmer has in his gift to appoint. Right now, Labour's ruling National Executive is meeting to decide what the rules of the contest to replace Angela Rayner in that role will be. We think that at least as long as the NEC, as it's known, goes along with it, it's going to be very quick. In particular, the first stage, at which every candidate who wants to run needs the backing of at least 80 of their colleagues, might well be over by Thursday this week. So I think that really advantages people who already have decent networks among their colleagues and are ready to hit the ground running.
And Henry, what's at stake? Because people watching this who aren't members of the Labour Party might think, well, why should I care who their deputy leader is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a bit unclear what's at stake, and because it's a bit unclear what this job will be. It's extremely rare, perhaps actually unprecedented, for there to be a deputy leadership election while the Labour Party is in government without there simultaneously being a leadership election. So you can have the very odd thing of Labour MPs, perhaps some of them members of the government, some of them not, competing for what their vision of the deputy leadership should be without actually having any sort of clear, promised influence over what the leadership will do and what the...
I mean, that's what people are suggesting it's going to be like. It's not actually going to be anything about changing government policy. It's just going to be a protest vote on how to undermine Keir Starmer's leadership, because even the PLP hates him at this point. The reality is that they're going to essentially elect someone into a position to either reaffirm or to criticise the current direction of the party, because that direction isn't going to change, right? They're just going to try and put someone into a position below Keir Starmer who will essentially be the one trying to undermine his leadership, which I think is very, very funny. I think it's very funny.
Government will be like. I mean, I think, you know, you will get a candidate or candidates who will explicitly run on a platform of changing the direction of the Labour Party, and then I think you will get others who will propose more a kind of critical friend role, be that from government or from outside of government. But then that makes the stakes quite high, because I think what may well be most important here is we will get a temperature check of what Labour Party members think of how Sir Keir Starmer and his government is performing. And, you know, I think there are lots of people, including people who are supportive of Keir Starmer, who believe that ultimately the Labour members will end up voting for the most anti-government candidate they get on the ballot paper.
And talking of that, who might well be in the frame for this? Obviously, we don't know the details yet. They do have to get quite a lot of backing from the parliamentary party, don't they? But what are the names that you're hearing?
They do need to get a lot of backing. I mean, 80 MPs, although worth noting, there's an awful lot of Labour MPs overall. So actually, that's still only 20% of Labour MPs. You could well end up with 3, perhaps 4 candidates getting that number. I mean, who's running? Well, there's basically no shortage of people saying, oh, I might do. Among them, Emily Thornberry, who was in Sir Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet before the general election, but then didn't get a role in it. She was talking about her sort of possible platform on Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg yesterday. I think you may also see Louise Haigh, who was in Keir Starmer's cabinet, ended up having to resign. She's perhaps more closely associated with what's known as Labour's soft left, so that's between its hard left, people more supportive of Jeremy Corbyn, or who were, and people in its centre or on the right of the Labour Party. But look,
when it comes to Louise Haigh, now I thought that, you know, her position was very soft on the soft left, but she appears to have picked up a bunch of left-wing talking points recently. I don't know whether or not these things are being said to try and win people's votes, considering what happened last time there was a leadership election within the Labour Party. But I do think it's quite interesting looking at Louise Haigh's article in the New Statesman today, where she was setting out how the economic position of the government is untenable because it's not good enough as a departure from neoliberal conservative politics. So I find it interesting that given that she was perceived to be soft enough of the left to be given a cabinet position in Keir Starmer's government, only then to be removed after someone mysteriously got wind of some spent conviction that she had for fraud. Wow, I'm so surprised that that made its way to the press from the left-wing member of the party. Wow, what a surprise, right? But this is what she puts out in the New Statesman. And this Twitter user is pointing out that essentially is mirroring the arguments from Zach Polanski over the nature of the economy, which again it's certainly not untrue that Zach's message is at least cutting through to other sections of the population over the neoliberal orthodoxy that we've been subjected to, right? So she's demanding what is being described as an economic reset and talk about fiscal rules and fiscal constraint, right? And this is what she says. There's a democratic argument at the heart of this as well. A Labour government with a landslide majority in Parliament cannot and should not be stopped from delivering the change we clearly set out in our manifesto simply because of assumptions made by the Office of Budget Responsibility. If we let unelected institutions dictate the limits of change, we betray the people and communities who put their trust in us. And if mainstream politics can't deliver proper renewal, populists like Nigel Farage will fill the void. Britain's economy is broken not just in outcomes but in architecture. Unless we rewrite the rules, we risk managed decline dressed up as moderation. I mean, same thing, different names, right? It's not dressed up as moderation, it is moderation in reality. Of course, there is a fiscal reason that they want to seem credible based upon what the OBR reports, but it's also an institutionalization of right-wing politics that is subscribed to by a bunch of Labour right figures who basically should be in the Liberal Democrats and not within the Labour Party, quite frankly. So it is both moderation and managed decline. Those things are one and the same. As it look at the collapse of the centre in France, look at the collapse of the centre in Germany, look at the collapse of the centre across Europe, and you're seeing radical voices on both the left and the right come in to fill the void of neoliberal failure. And it is the continual support of those narratives by people in positions of political power who have that influence because of the relationships to that power that has allowed this neoliberal groupthink to essentially become party doctrine across the board. I'm devastated by the departure of Angela Rayner last week, who consistently offered a challenge to the establishment orthodoxy. Her absence is a real loss to those of us who want to see bold, radical thinking at the heart of government. Yet it's weird that her bold and radical thinking at the heart of government never actually materialised, right? One of the things that I was hoping from her, given that Keir Starmer won the leadership election, considering that I voted for Angela Rayner, is that because she was in an elected position, this was basically the only way she was ever leaving was if there was a scandal that forced her resignation. She couldn't be removed by Keir Starmer or McSweeney or anyone from the Politburo, is that she would be able and willing to speak up. She will be able and willing to oppose the neoliberal excesses of the government, right? Because there was no way of being able to remove her from the position as deputy leader. And that never fucking materialised. She was happy to wave through cuts like the disability cuts. She was happy to be on Keir Starmer and McSweeney's side when it came to the two-child benefit cap. And she has betrayed all of the continued support for Palestine that she previously gave that she now does not have. So it's completely unreasonable to try and think that radical thinking at the heart of government was anything to do with whether or not Angela Rayner was there or not, because she'd shown that she was happy to cuck out to the centre of the party to be able to make friends with the organ grinder, right? The reshuffle has been billed as a political reset, but if we are serious about delivering on our priorities, it must offer more than a change of personnel around the cabinet table. What the country needs is now an economic reset, a decisive break with the fiscal rules and institutional constraints that hold back renewal. Only then can Labour turn its democratic mandate into the transformation Britain so urgently needs. And she goes on in the rest of the article to talk about the fact that the OBR don't understand the economic gains of long-term investment, right? It has institutionalized short-term thinking, and that's true, right? One of the reasons why we never actually engaged in the necessary levels of spending that we should have done when interest rates were zero was that the OBR was always predicting that they would have worse returns than they actually probably could do, especially when the money was basically free to borrow to do it. And so it institutionalized this idea, given the OBR was an Osbornian invention, of not fixing the roof while the sun was shining, when now obviously we've got a massive hole in the roof and we're being pissed on by the rain, you know? This is all part of Osbornism. If you want to be free of Osbornism, you need to free yourself from the artificial constraints imposed by him, which is the OBR, their institutional capture. And so I'll be interested to see if Louise Haigh gets a lot of support from the backbenchers to be able to run as a deputy leader, because she is fundamentally coming up against all of the economic prescriptions that come from McSweeney-Reevesism as far as fiscal policy is concerned. Because their whole pitch was, we can keep all of the stabilisers of Osbornism intact whilst tinkering around at the edges, not changing any of the broad taxes also, whilst having fiscal rules in place that restrict in how much they can actually invest into fixing the broken social infrastructure in this country. I think, again, it's fundamentally a poor way of actually looking at long-term policy. They said they wanted a decade of national renewal, and they are, quite frankly, putting on a huge fiscal straitjacket that completely stops them from doing it. And if they continue with that, they will be the only ones to blame if Reform UK win the next election.
She's suggesting a whole new set of fiscal rules.
I think that's why we need a contest where we put the country before the party, that people in the country just hear us fundamentally talking all the time about what we're going to do to make their lives better, to tackle the cost of living crisis, to make their country and our future more secure. That is what people care about, not who is in what position in the Labour Party. And so I think that's what we need.
Well, that's what Louise Haigh is saying. She is trying to say that the party is failing the country by having bad fiscal policy. That's the whole point of the article. You know, she's trying to challenge the leadership of the party, or because she believes that they aren't fundamentally putting the interests of the country at heart. They're putting the political interests of Starmer, Reeves, McSweeney, etc., over the interests of the country, right? The whole point of political ideology and internal political discussion is about who believes that their ideological position is the best at doing things for the country. That's the whole point of politics, the whole point of elections, rather than just contests for who's the best at some nebulous idea of what management looks like, which is, of course, always is kowtowing to a right-wing framing of competence, because they, for some reason, have been able to paint themselves as that, even though that's fundamentally untrue when you look at literally all of British history. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for memberships. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.